Hello everybody, Niclas Huschenbeth here, and I have another game analysis for you from the Mitropa Cup. This time round number 7 we played against Austria, and I played on board 1 for Germany against Valentin Dragnev, international master, with a rating of 2485. So let's get to it. For those of you watching wondering what is the Mitropa Cup, the Mitropa Cup is a team competition, 10 teams from Middle Europe playing against each other in a round robin. And I'm playing for Germany, and well, another team was Austria, and we played in round 7. So I was playing with the white pieces and started as usual with e4, and Valentin replied with his main weapon e5, and we go into the Ruy Lopez. And for I think the first time in my life I played a main line here. Usually I always play some sort of sideline. But here I looked at this move a4, which is an anti-martial variation. So the martial would arise after c3, d5, but a5 does not allow the martial. Now b4, and now there's this interesting idea to early on play a5. What does that do? Well, it fixes the pawn on a6, which can sometimes be a target, and on the other hand, also the pawn on b4 cannot be supported by black playing a5. Also has its drawbacks, as the pawn on a5 can be picked up by black in some variations. For example, if you play something like this. So interesting variation and quite complex play, and this is what I wanted in this game. d6, d3, bishop e6, takes, knight bd2, rook b8. So we see the rook is already getting ready if white opens with c3, the b file, or this idea rook b5. Now knight b3, and I was following the game here where So against Levon Aronian from the candidates in Berlin, where So played a beautiful game, and he had this plan of knight b3, playing h3, bishop e3, knight bd2 back, c3, and so on. And here Valentin fought for a long time, and he played queen d7, which is perfectly logical, h3, h6, and here I played c3 right away. I wasn't too sure about this plan of bishop e3 right now, but actually I can just go for d4 in this position. I've prepared it, so we're waiting until the whatever vehicle that was goes by, tractor or something. I could have gone for d4, takes, knight b takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4 immediately. And this seems to be a little bit more pleasant for white, as I have ideas with e5, maybe queen c4, hitting the pawn a6, hitting the pawn e6, so a little bit better for white. But I played c3, he took and played rook b5, he wants to double on the b file and put pressure on the pawn, and I played d4 nonetheless. Now rook b8, and here I could just retreat with the knight to d2 actually. Maybe I should do that, maybe that would be a better move. But I liked d takes e5, so I played it. He took with the knight, which I think is fine. He shouldn't take on b3 because I take on f6, and here one drawback of the queen on d7 is that it can often use this pin on the d file, play e5. He cannot take because the queen is unprotected, and if he goes back, can play queen d3. I have ideas like this also in the position, and this looks good for white. Knight takes e5. And here took with the knight. Yeah, also the alternatives are not great. First I want to go knight bd4, but then rook b1 is just fine for black. Exchanging a pair of rooks is fine, it's equal. And knight fd4, he just goes back to b7, and if I go f4 here, then he can reply with c5. Takes, and the knight is attacked, and if the knight moves, then the knight on b3 drops, so this is fine for black as well. So I played knight takes e5, he took with the rook. He could also take with the pawn, but I would have been happy to play this position, because here I just always have the structural advantage, because these pawns are targets, and I can maybe put my knight on c4, where it also protects the pawn a5. So I would have liked to play this position. Computer thinks it's equal, but I would prefer white. He took with the rook. And here I made an inaccuracy. I played knight d2. I should play f3. I just didn't want to play this move because it kind of looked ugly with f3 and h3, and didn't want to open up this diagonal here against my king. But this is what I should do here, play f3. Because after knight d2, he goes queen c6, good move, improving the queen, hitting c3, hitting e4. And I saw this, but what I realized a little bit too late, only after I played queen c2, is that he plays rook b5 now, which is actually not the best move in the position. I also missed another idea, which is that he can go d5. And I thought he can reply with f4 here, but what I just missed is that he can sacrifice the exchange, and this is quite pleasant for black with a strong knight on e4 and weaknesses in my position all around, bishop coming to c5. So this is nice position for black. So maybe after d5 I should play something else like c4, but in either case black is already more comfortable. After rook b5 it's quite unclear. So he goes after the a5 pawn, which I cannot protect comfortably, so I decide to sacrifice it. Well, I had to anyway. c4, he takes on a5. And there are often scenarios where white gives this pawn on a5 and gets nice counterplay because the black pieces are maybe disorganized, and also the pawn structure is always a little bit of a problem for black because also his king is weak in general with this pawn structure. It's a little bit tricky for black. But here I made a mistake. I played rook b1. I didn't want to trade a pair of rooks, but I should have. I should play bishop b2 here. Rook takes a1, bishop takes a1. Now rook a5, let's say. And now this is a typical break in this position to play e5 to break up the pawn structure in the center. D takes e5, bishop c3, and then take on e5. And black has a lot of weaknesses. And this gives white sufficient compensation here. Position is around equal. This is always what I want to do. I want to play e5 so I can break this up and open a position for my pieces. But I played rook b1 and I was quite happy with my position. And I remember going to the bathroom and thinking, you have a nice position, you have much more time on your clock, don't play too quickly. And then I came back and made a mistake. Next move right away. But in fact I overestimated my position. He played a strong move here, rook eb5. I only looked at rook ab5, so both moves make use of this pin on the c file. I cannot take because my queen is unprotected. But after rook ab5 I can play bishop b2 and go after the rook, and after rook h5 I can play queen d1, threatening to take this rook, as well as if the rook leaves the 5th rank to take on f6 and take the rook on h5. Computer still says might be okay for black, but this looks really awkward and probably white is better here. But taking the other rook to b5 is much better, and I thought this wasn't possible because of the move I played, but I just missed something very simple. So here I played too quickly, but in either case black is already better here. If I play bishop b2, he goes rook a2 and I just cannot get to the rooks anymore. And actually I need to exchange one of them sooner or later. I'll be a pawn down. Maybe best would be to go queen c3, rook takes b1, queen takes a5, but also here I'm a pawn down and I'm fighting for draw pretty much. So I played knight b3 and thinking I'm pretty much winning, but after rook a4 what I simply missed is that he threatens to take on c4, and that knight d4, which was my plan, does not work out because he takes on c4, knight takes c6, rook takes c2, I win the piece, but my knight is stranded on c8. He has already 2 pawns and he can play b4 with the idea b3, b2, or he can take another pawn on e4, and I'm really fighting for a draw here. This will not be easy task to defend this endgame. And I didn't want this, and I thought, okay, I might still have some compensation because his rook is out of play, but after knight d2 I'm pretty much just lost. I had to play this move to defend the pawn, but here he just trades the rook, which was his problem in the position because it was out of the game, but he trades it, and the rook on a4 is actually well placed because it puts pressure on the pawn c4. And he continued to play well here, played knight d7, stuffing e5, which would be my dream to achieve, to get some play against the king, but now e5. Actually e5 is the computer's first suggestion, knight takes e5, bishop b2, but this already tells you how desperate the white position is, that you have to give another pawn with some hopes that you can get something going here. And well, black maybe has to play some more precise moves and should win. I played bishop b2 right away, and now he stopped all my dreams of achieving e5 ever in this game, played e5 himself. another good move. And the problem is here for me that I'm not only a pawn down, but this pawn will also drop very soon, as white is black is attacking it already twice and ready to play bishop g5 and attack the defender on d2. So I played bishop c3, I offered a draw here, which, well, of course was rejected, but I just had to try still because my opponent was a little bit low on time. He maybe had 11, 12, 13 minutes left for 12 moves to make, so I thought, why not? But bishop g5 and black is just winning here. I saw this move and I thought, okay, maybe I can still do something here with queen b3. And here black should just take his time. There's nothing to rush, just play king h7, and there's really not much I can do anyway. But he took on d2, and this already makes it a little bit trickier, because my bishop comes to this diagonal, and there are some ideas against the black king. And here he made a big mistake. He played king to h7, so he plays the one move too late. If he takes with the queen, then I can either play queen g3, or queen b7. In both cases I have counterplay, black is better, but not easy, especially if you don't have much time on the clock. Best would be actually to just take with the rook. This pin does not really matter because of the rook c1, black can go d5. And if I go queen f3 now, then knight f8. Still I can try to muddle the waters, but ultimately black should win here. After king h7, suddenly the position is already equal again, because after queen f3 I'm getting nice play against the black king, and the problem for black is that his pieces are far away here on the queen side. So I'm threatening queen f5, for example, to come close and always sacrifice my bishop on h6 to open up the black king. Play king g8 back. Of course I don't repeat moves here, I play something else, I play bishop takes h6. And here I was getting quite optimistic because my opponent was, like I said, low on time, and the position is suddenly difficult for black. Difficult to play. He took on c4, which is a good move. If he takes the pawn, the bishop, I play rook e3, preparing to bring my rook over, and this is definitely okay for white, at least. I think black still holds on here, but very dangerous for black. So he took on c4. And here I thought for 16 minutes, but what I played wasn't ultimately best. I played rook to c1. Best would be to go queen g3, which I also considered, of course, queen f7, protecting against the checkmate. Now bishop takes g7. And first I thought this is winning, because after queen takes g7 I have queen b3 picking up the rook. But he has king h7 and I cannot get my bishop out again. Now he threatens to take. And here my plan was to go rook e3. This would be a blunder because black has a very strong move, queen f4, forcing queen trade. And the problem is that this is very cute actually. After takes, rook c3. Black doesn't take on g7 now because rook takes c7 wins back the knight on d7 due to a pin. But he plays c5 and it's very cute because here my bishop just doesn't have any squares and the rook is blocking the way back and I just lose a piece and lose the game. So rook e3 would be a mistake, but a way to draw here would be to go queen g5, threatening queen h6, so black takes, and now queen h4, and this should be a repetition of moves. Both sides cannot really avoid it. But I played rook c1, thinking, okay, he has to go queen f7, and then I'll take on c7, and we get this rook endgame where I can still try something. Equal pawns, but maybe I can bring my king up. His king is cut off on the 8th rank. So I thought, okay, maybe I can try something. At least I'm not risking anything here. But what I miss is that he can play queen e6, which is stronger. Because now if I take on c7, he takes with the pawn on h6, and I don't have enough play here with the queen and the rook. So in fact what I should do is just retreat with the bishop, bishop g5, bishop e3, and the position is quite unclear. I'm down a pawn, but the black king is still weak, and maybe I can move up my h-pawn to open up the king position, and completely unclear honestly. But I wanted more, and I took on g7, and again I missed my opponent's move. Yeah, we're both now pretty low on time. And he played c5, another strong move. If he takes the bishop, then I can take on c7. I threaten to go queen g4 maybe, and I at least always have a perpetual of some sort. Maybe I can even bring the rook here. This looks dangerous for black, but is okay. It should be equal. But c5, and now I'm in trouble. And I have to be very precise to not be worse. And I didn't find the right way. I played rook c3, get my rook into the attack, but he can defend here. I should go queen g3. Now once again king h7, I just cannot get my bishop out. But queen g5, rook takes e4, and now rook a1, queen g6, and bishop h6. And the position remains unclear about equal. He cannot really take on h6 because of queen f5, winning the pawn a6, and we are 3 against 3, pretty much. Still pretty crazy. No idea what's going on in this endgame, for example. Those pawns are quick, but the bishop is a good defender and can play on both sides of the board. Anyways, I played rook c3 with my clock ticking down here, and he took the bishop now, queen h5, and he can defend like this, which I saw, but I thought that here I can play queen f5, and I thought, okay, I still have some chance, my king is pretty safe, and my rook and queen are attacking, but he can defend here. What I saw quickly is that he cannot play queen f6 because I can pick up the rook, but of course he can give a check first, and that's what he did. And here I thought, okay, he plays queen f6, and I probably don't have enough. And I was very, very much relieved when he took the queen on f5. After queen f6, indeed, black is winning check. Now queen f6, queen takes d6 would be unclear, but black goes king h6, rook f3, and here he has to find queen e7. That's the last important move, but at this point he would have had more time again. It's the 41st move, and I'm sure he would have found it. Queen g5 would be a mistake because rook f7 wins. By queen e7, and just cannot really continue the attack in a good way. Black brings back the king, and the knight just guards the king nicely, and I would like to go h5, but black always can take with the queen on h4. So this would ultimately win for black. But he took on f5, I take back, win back the knight next move, and here he made another mistake, the 40th move now, and here he should go rook d1 to protect the pawn d6, and then this will be very much unclear. The difference to the game is that I need much more time to get behind the c-pawn, and position is equal because there will be some kind of perpetual check. Of course, very complex still. The problem for black after d5, instead of the check, king f7, now I can easily get behind these pawns. And my pawns will be very strong on f5 and g5. So I think this rook endgame is lost for black already here. d4, g5, rook b1. I thought he might try something like this, rook a3 to get the rook to f3. But now after king g2, e4, I have a very nice check with rook f6. And if he goes to g7, I can just push h4 and h5, h6, and that'll be too quick. And if he goes to f7 or to e7, excuse me, I can just give a check here and pick up the pawn if needed and push my pawns, and this is winning. So he played rook b1, and here I took the pawn a6, rook b7. He defends against the check on the 7th rank, but I can just go after this pawn as well. And he puts his hopes on the d pawn, but I get my rook in front of it, and I'm 2 pawns up at the moment. Plays rook d4, and this was the last kind of tricky moment, because what he wants to do here, if I play king g3, is he wants to go rook f4, provoke me to play f6, then come back, and then he can play the king to g6. And I thought this is quite tricky. Computer tells us it's still winning after f4, but that's the only winning move here, and you would need to find this. So this would be much more messy than I needed to be, than I want to be. So I found a different way here. Actually, there's also g6, which wins, but this is the computer win. Just to show you, the point is that here I can queen as well, and then in the end game with queen and rook, I'll be winning because my king is safe and his king is not. This is usually what you want to look at in those kind of positions, which is considered the 4th phase of the game, when an endgame again leads to, with queens on the board and rooks, then king safety just decides the game. But I played the human way here, which is rook d1, rook f4, and now just take the pawn. Takes on f5, and now of course I want to keep my past connected pawns here, so I play h4, give this one, and I'm only one pawn up, but I have these connected passed pawns, and they are enough. He has to move the rook from the f5, because otherwise I can go rook f3, goes rook e2, h5, rook e4, and now rook d7 check, and my pawns are just running forward and there's nothing black can do. King f5, g7, rook g4 check, king f2, king e6. Now it would be a mistake to go h6 because this position is winning, but why would I make my life that much more difficult? So I just move my rook away and there's nothing black can do to stop h6, h7. So played a few more moves here, and now Valentin resigned. So very lucky win for me, because I was clearly lost twice in the game. First after, well, knight b3 and then knight d2 back, just a pawn down and then 2 pawns down. Was very fortunate to get play against his king, and then in the time trouble made another mistake, and yeah, but Valentin also blundered, and then in the rook end game I did not put a foot wrong and managed to convert in the end, and this gave us actually the win over Austria, 2.5 to 1.5. So we are in still 4th place, competing for the top spots in the last 2 rounds, and well, that was this game, another very exciting game. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe and also like this video. And then I see you guys next time. Have a good day. Bye bye.